You're doing it all wrong. Emma sighed dramatically, snatching the wooden spoon from my hand. This is why everyone dreads your cooking, Sarah. You have no idea what you're doing in a kitchen. I stood there in my own kitchen, watching as my sister-in-law started correcting the sauce I'd been carefully preparing for our weekly family dinner. The recipe had been in my family for generations, passed down from my grandmother, who had taught me everything I knew about cooking. I've been making this sauce for years, I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. It's my grandmother's recipe. Emma rolled her eyes, adding more herbs without even tasting it. Well, clearly your grandmother wasn't much of a cook either. Trust me, I know what I'm doing. I watch all the cooking shows. The words stung more than I wanted to admit. My grandmother had been more than just a cook. She had been the heart of our family, bringing us together around her kitchen table with recipes that told stories of our heritage. Each dish was a memory, a piece of family history served with love and care. But ever since Emma married my brother David 2 months ago, she'd made it her mission to improve everything about our family gatherings, especially the food. According to her, everything I cooked was either too bland, too simple, or just plain wrong. Why don't you let me handle dinner from now on? Emma suggested, though it sounded more like a command. Mom and Dad will be so relieved to finally have some decent food at these gatherings. My parents, who had always praised my cooking and requested my dishes for every holiday, had recently started complimenting Emma's modern take on family meals. Even David, who grew up loving our grandmother's recipes, now raved about Emma's exotic fusion dishes. I watched as she continued to transform my sauce, adding ingredients that would have made my grandmother shake her head in dismay. The familiar aroma that usually filled my kitchen during family dinners was disappearing, replaced by something that felt foreign and wrong. You know what? I said, untying my apron. You're right, the kitchen is all yours. Emma's face lit up with triumph. Finally, you're being sensible. Don't worry, I'll show you how it's really done. I walked out of my own kitchen, feeling like a stranger in my home. But instead of the defeat Emma probably expected me to feel, a plan was forming in my mind. In my bedroom, hidden in my grandmother's old recipe box, was something that could change everything. I retrieved the wooden box from my closet, its surface worn smooth from years of loving use. Inside, among the yellowed recipe cards and handwritten notes, was a special envelope my grandmother had given me before she passed away. This is more than just a recipe, dear heart, she had told me, her eyes twinkling. It's our family's story in a dish. Share it only when the time is right, when someone needs to understand what cooking really means. I hadn't opened it yet, waiting for that right moment. Now listening to Emma rattle pans in my kitchen while lecturing everyone about proper cooking techniques, I knew the time had come. Opening the envelope with trembling fingers, I read through the recipe, tears welling in my eyes. It wasn't just instructions for cooking, it was a letter to me, explaining the history behind each ingredient, the memories attached to each step. This wasn't just food, it was love written in measurements and methods. From downstairs, I could hear Emma announcing her plans to host all future family dinners. Sarah's kitchen is just so basic, she was saying. My new copper cookware collection would be much better for proper entertaining. I tucked the recipe carefully into my pocket. Next week's dinner would be at Emma's house, her first time hosting. She didn't know it yet, but I would be bringing more than just a side dish to share. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Emma's really excited about hosting. Maybe you could learn something from her? I typed back a simple response. Don't worry, I have the perfect recipe to share. Looking at my grandmother's recipe box one last time before putting it away, I smiled. Emma thought cooking was about impressing people, about showing off and being modern. She was about to learn what my grandmother had taught me years ago, that the most important ingredient in any dish isn't found on a cooking show or in a fancy copper pot. Sometimes the best recipes aren't about the food at all. As I headed back downstairs, Emma was already planning her menu for next week, listing ingredients I could barely pronounce. The family nodded along, caught up in her enthusiasm. None of them noticed the quiet smile on my face. My grandmother always said timing was everything in cooking and in life. And next week, when I shared her special recipe, Emma would learn exactly what she'd been missing in her perfectly plated, precisely measured dishes. The secret ingredient wasn't in any cookbook, and it was about to change everything. The following week, I stood at Emma's doorstep holding a simple covered dish. She greeted me with her usual air of superiority, eyeing my contribution with barely concealed disdain. "Oh, you didn't have to bring anything," she said, her perfectly painted lips curved in a dismissive smile. "I've prepared everything already. Professional grade, of course." Her kitchen was a showcase of modern appliances and expensive cookware. Copper pots gleamed from hooks, and specialized gadgets lined the counters. The warm, lived-in feel of family kitchen was nowhere to be found. "Trust me," I said softly, "you'll want to try this." Emma's dinner party was exactly what she'd promised. Elaborate, sophisticated, and completely soulless. Each dish looked like it had jumped straight from a magazine cover, arranged with surgical precision. My parents and David praised every course, though I noticed they took small portions and left most uneaten. And for dessert, Emma announced proudly, "I've prepared a deconstructed tiramisu with coffee-infused molecular gastronomy spheres." That was my cue. I stood up, retrieving my covered dish from the kitchen. "Actually, I'd like to share something first, if that's okay." Emma's face tightened, but social graces prevented her from refusing. I placed the dish in the center of the table and removed the cover, revealing what appeared to be a simple apple pie. "Really, Sarah?" Emma couldn't hide her contempt. "A basic pie, after my 5-course gourmet meal?" I ignored her tone and began serving slices. "This isn't just any pie," I said, pulling my grandmother's letter from my pocket. "This is our family story." As everyone took their first bites, I started reading. "My dearest Sarah, the recipe I'm sharing isn't just about apples and cinnamon. Each ingredient carries a piece of our history. The apples come from the trees your grandfather planted when we first bought our house, the same trees you climbed as a child. The cinnamon reminds me of autumn afternoons when your mother was young, helping me bake while telling me about her day at school. The butter for the crust comes from the recipe my mother taught me during the war, and we had to make do with what we had. She showed me that love makes everything taste better, even in hard times. The sugar represents the sweetness of family gatherings, of laughter around our table, of celebrations and comfort in times of sorrow. But the most important ingredient isn't listed in the measurements. It's the memories we fold into every dish, the love we share through food, the stories that season our lives better than any spice could." I looked up from the letter. Emma had stopped eating, her fork frozen halfway to her mouth. A tear rolled down her cheek. "This," she whispered, "this tastes exactly like the pie my own grandmother used to make, before she passed away." Her voice cracked. "I never got her recipe. She died before she could teach me." The room fell silent as Emma took another bite, more tears falling. I remember sitting in her kitchen, watching her bake. She never measured anything exactly, drove me crazy trying to learn from her. But somehow, it always turned out perfect. My mother reached over and squeezed Emma's hand. "Sometimes the best recipes can't be measured," she said gently. Emma looked down at her plate, then at her elaborate kitchen with all its shiny, unused equipment. I thought if I could make everything perfect, technical, professional, maybe I'd finally feel like I belonged in this family, like I had something special to offer. "Oh, sweetheart," my mother said, "you already belong. You don't have to prove anything." I pulled out another envelope from my pocket, a copy I'd made of my grandmother's recipe. "The secret ingredient isn't perfect technique or expensive equipment," I said, sliding it across the table to Emma. "It's love, and that's something worth sharing." Emma picked up the envelope with trembling hands. "Would you?" She paused, wiping her eyes. "Would you teach me? Not just the recipe, but the stories too. I want to learn what really makes a family kitchen special." Looking around the table at my family's faces, my parents' proud smiles, David's loving gaze at his wife, and Emma's tearful but genuine request, I knew my grandmother's recipe had worked its magic once again. "Of course," I said warmly. "We can start right now." The following Sunday morning, my kitchen was filled with the familiar scent of baking apples and cinnamon. Emma stood beside me at the counter, her designer outfit replaced by a simple apron, carefully peeling apples just as I'd shown her. "Like this?" she asked, her voice carrying none of its usual superiority. Instead, there was an eagerness to learn that reminded me of myself at my grandmother's counter years ago. "Perfect," I smiled, showing her how to cut the apples into even slices. "Now tell me about your grandmother's kitchen. What do you remember most?" Emma's hand slowed as she thought. "She had this old wooden spoon," she said softly. "It was worn smooth from years of use. She used to let me lick cookie dough off it when Mom wasn't looking. She laughed, then wiped away a tear with her sleeve. As we worked together, more memories surfaced. Emma told me about Sunday mornings with her grandmother, about failed attempts at cookies that turned into family jokes, and about the last pie they made together before she got sick. I was so angry when she passed, Emma admitted, carefully mixing the pie filling. I thought she'd left me without teaching me everything I needed to know, so I threw myself into learning professional techniques, thinking that would somehow make up for what I lost. I showed her how to crimp the edges of the pie crusts, the way my grandmother had taught me. Sometimes the most important lessons aren't about technique at all, I said gently. I see that now, Emma replied, her fingers carefully following mine. That's why I was so difficult when I first joined the family. I thought I had to prove myself, be better than everyone else at everything, especially cooking. The timer dinged for our first pie, and together we pulled it from the oven. The golden brown crust gleamed, and the aroma filled the kitchen with warmth and memories. It's not perfect, Emma fretted, noting the slightly uneven crimping. Look closer, I said, pointing to where the crust had bubbled and browned. Those little imperfections, that's what makes it unique. That's what makes it yours. David arrived just then, following his nose to the kitchen. He stopped in the doorway, taking in the sight of his wife and sister working side by side. Flour dusting our aprons, laughter in our eyes. Something smells amazing, he said, reaching for a slice. Emma playfully swatted his hand away. Wait until it cools. Sarah taught me that patience is part of the recipe too. The pride in David's eyes as he looked at his wife made my heart swell. This was what my grandmother had meant about the power of sharing more than just recipes. Over the next few hours, as we baked pies for the upcoming family dinner, Emma and I shared stories, laughed at our mistakes, and created new memories. She told me about her dreams of opening a small cafe someday, not a fancy restaurant like she'd originally planned, but a cozy place where people could feel at home. Maybe, she said hesitantly, we could do it together. Your grandmother's recipes, combined with some of my modern touches. The suggestion took me by surprise, but as I thought about it, a smile spread across my face. Actually, that sounds perfect. That evening, as our family gathered around the table, Emma proudly served her pie. It wasn't just dessert she was sharing. It was her heart, her memories, her newfound understanding of what makes a family recipe special. Before everyone takes a bite, she said, her voice wavering slightly, I want to share something. Sarah didn't just teach me how to make a pie this week. She taught me that the best flavors come from love, memories, and family. She turned to me, eyes shining. Thank you for showing me what I was missing, for welcoming me into this family's kitchen. My mother squeezed my hand under the table as everyone tasted Emma's pie. The expressions on their faces said everything. This wasn't just good food, it was love made visible. Later, as we cleaned up together, Emma paused while drying a dish. You know what's funny, she said. I spent so much time trying to prove I was better than everyone, when all I really needed to do was be myself. I handed her another plate, thinking of my grandmother's wisdom. Sometimes the best recipes aren't about the food at all. They're about family, Emma finished, smiling. I get that now. Looking around my kitchen, at the flour-dusted counters, the lingering warmth from the oven, and my sister-in-law who had become a true sister, I knew my grandmother would be proud. Her recipe had done exactly what she intended. It had brought our family closer, one slice of pie at a time. The next morning, I found a note from Emma propped against my grandmother's recipe box. Thank you for sharing more than just a recipe. You've given me back my grandmother's kitchen and shown me what it means to be part of a family. Looking forward to many more Sunday baking sessions with my sister. Love, Emma. I placed the note inside the recipe box, knowing it would become part of our family's story, just like every recipe within. Sometimes the sweetest endings come from the most unexpected ingredients.